The orbital academy hung like a jewel above the blue planet, its massive rings of glass and metal reflecting the sun in shards of gold and silver. Inside the sprawling halls, cadets hurried from one simulation chamber to another, voices echoing with laughter, arguments, and the occasional shout of triumph. Every corner of the academy was alive with ambition, the air thick with confidence, competition, and the constant hum of hovering drones that served as both instructors and obstacles. Lyra Vance walked quietly through the corridors, her uniform spotless, her posture straight but unassuming. Her dark hair was pulled back into a practical braid, and her brown eyes moved constantly, observing patterns in the chaos around her. Unlike most cadets, she didn't boast or push herself to the front. She preferred the quiet corners, the corners where she could think, write, and calculate without interruption. Today, she carried her small notebook tucked under her arm, filled with notes and diagrams that made no sense to anyone but her. "Hey, look at Lyra," one cadet whispered as she passed, still scribbling in that notebook like it's going to win a fight for her. Their words bounced off her, meaningless as the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. She had learned long ago that people rarely understood the mind of someone who preferred observation over showmanship. They mocked what they did not comprehend. The Academy's AI instructor, a sleek hovering unit with an iridescent shell, materialized in the center of the main chamber. Its voice, smooth and metallic, carried effortlessly to every corner. "Cadets, today's exercise is a simulated combat scenario. Teams will face autonomous drones in the arena. Objectives: neutralize threats, demonstrate strategy, and maintain team cohesion. Efficiency will be measured. Commence preparation in 10 minutes. Cadets began arguing over teams, demonstrating flashy maneuvers and practicing weapon systems with over-the-top enthusiasm. Lyra, as usual, did nothing outwardly. She found a quiet spot near the edge of the chamber, opened her notebook, and began making small calculations in the margins. Numbers, angles, probabilities. Every movement of the drones, every potential trajectory of the arena's obstacles, every mistake a cadet might make, she accounted for it all. To anyone watching, it looked like idle doodling. To Lyra, it was a plan, a map, and a strategy all at once. The other cadets noticed her and laughed again. "You seriously think scribbling lines on paper will save you out there?" one of them shouted. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a smug grin that barely hid his lack of foresight. "Come on, Lyra, show us what you got." Cadets surged forward with loud shouts, firing laser pistols, dodging and weaving through the obstacles. Chaos erupted instantly. Lyra stepped in last, moving with calm precision. She didn't rush. She didn't shout. She didn't collide with anyone. Instead, she observed. The drones moved in predictable patterns, just as she had calculated. Some cadets rushed straight into corners, triggering the drones' defensive algorithms. Others tried flashy maneuvers that left them exposed. The room filled with the sounds of alarms, buzzing drones, and the occasional panicked shout. One cadet, the same one who had mocked her earlier, charged recklessly toward a drone hovering above a narrow platform. He jumped, misjudged his landing, and nearly fell off the edge. Lyra's eyes flicked to her notebook. A small diagram showed the precise point where the drone's trajectory intersected with the cadet's movement. With a quiet, measured step, she approached the drone, aimed her pulse weapon at the calculated angle, and fired. The drone collapsed in a controlled explosion, narrowly missing the cadet. He looked up at her in shock. How did you?" Every move was deliberate, every shot counted. Some cadets began to whisper, their earlier laughter replaced by uneasy murmurs. She's not just smart, she's predicting the drones." She was already working on the next problem, the drones that moved in pairs, their attack patterns more complex. She traced lines and angles in her notebook, her mind moving faster than the cadets around her. The arena was alive with chaos, but she remained a calm island in the storm. One of the more arrogant cadets tried to confront her. "Hey, why don't you work with the team for once? You can't just sit there scribbling numbers." Lyra watched the angles, waited, and fired at the exact moment to neutralize the drones without harming him. He stumbled back, breathing hard, eyes wide with shock. By the time the exercise ended, Lyra had single-handedly neutralized the majority of threats in the arena, often without anyone noticing her movements, until the results flashed across the AI instructor's display. Her team had won not through brute force or loud heroics, but through careful calculation, patience, and observation. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then the whispers began, louder this time. She's amazing." Lyra didn't celebrate. She closed her notebook and tucked it under her arm. To her, the exercise had been nothing more than another problem solved, another set of variables calculated and acted upon. As the cadets filed out, exhausted and humbled, Lyra paused at the edge of the arena. She looked at the drones, many of which had been disabled but would soon reset for the next exercise. A small smile touched her lips. Humans often underestimated the quiet ones. They laughed at the scribblers, the observers, the thinkers, but underestimating them was always a mistake. In the corner, a new cadet approached her, eyes wide with curiosity. I didn't think anyone could do that. How did you? I just noticed what everyone else was missing. It's easier when you pay attention. Lyra opened her notebook again and began to jot down new calculations. She would prepare for the next drill, the next challenge, the next enemy. Her quiet notes were not just notes, they were plans, strategies, and predictions. She knew that someday they would make a difference in a way no one could laugh at. And when that day came, the cadets who had snickered at her would step back. But for now, she wrote quietly, smiled to herself, and waited for the next challenge, her mind already calculating, predicting, and preparing. In the vast, competitive halls of the Orbital Academy, one truth had become clear. The quiet ones should never be underestimated. The sun crested over the horizon of the planet below, painting the clouds in shades of gold and pink. Inside the Orbital Academy, the quiet hum of activity had returned. Cadets scurried through the halls, some still sore from yesterday's simulated combat exercise, others eager to prove themselves again. Among them, Lyra moved as if nothing had changed. She carried her notebook, now slightly scuffed from constant use, and a small satchel with her personal equipment. The AI instructor hovered in the main chamber, its iridescent surface catching the morning light. Its voice filled the room, calm but commanding. Cadets, today's exercise will test your ability to adapt. The previous simulation demonstrated technical skill, but strategic thinking is just as important. Teams will face unpredictable enemy drones with dynamic AI patterns. Only those who can anticipate, adapt, and execute efficiently will succeed. Prepare accordingly. She found her usual spot near the edge of the chamber, pulled out her notebook, and began studying the new schematics the AI had released. Numbers, shapes, and trajectories filled her pages. She noted the paths the drones had taken yesterday, identified patterns, and calculated probabilities for potential variations. Unlike others, she didn't need loud demonstrations of skill to feel confident. Observation and calculation were her strength. A group of cadets approached her, led by the same tall, broad-shouldered cadet who had mocked her yesterday. He leaned against the wall, smirking. "Still scribbling away, Lyra? You do realize this is about action, not numbers, right?" "Action without understanding is wasted effort," she said softly, her eyes already flicking back to the diagrams. The cadet laughed. "You talk big for someone who doesn't even step forward first. Watch and learn." He strode toward the arena, his friends following. Lyra remained seated, tracing the drone's flight patterns with her pen. She noticed subtle details others overlooked. The slight delay in a drone's maneuver after detecting motion, the way the AI favored certain paths when multiple targets were present, the rare but predictable errors in its logic. She scribbled notes, made tiny sketches, and calculated angles. To the casual observer, it looked like endless doodling. To Lyra, it was preparation for victory. When the arena doors opened, chaos erupted immediately. Cadets rushed in, shouting, diving, and firing at drones with reckless abandon. Several collided mid-air, forcing emergency maneuvers. The AI's drones reacted swiftly, swarming the loudest, most aggressive cadets first. Screams of surprise and alarm filled the chamber. Lyra entered last, her movements deliberate, her steps calm. She scanned the arena, memorizing the locations of drones, obstacles, and fellow cadets. Unlike others, she didn't run blindly into the swarm. She calculated the safest path, the angles for maximum efficiency, and the sequence in which she would engage threats. A drone hovered near a narrow platform, its sensors flashing red. One of the more reckless cadets leapt toward it without checking his trajectory. Lyra had already calculated the drone's response. With a single, precise shot, she neutralized it, saving the cadet from a likely collision. He stumbled back, eyes wide, muttering something incoherent. By the time 10 minutes had passed, the arena was a chaotic blur of movement. Cadets struggled to coordinate, often blocking one another or triggering drone defenses unintentionally. Lyra moved through the chaos like a shadow, striking only when necessary, always calculating, always precise. Every drone she eliminated left her path clearer for the next challenge. Some cadets began to notice the difference between themselves and Lyra. "How is she doing that?" one whispered, ducking behind a platform as a drone swooped past. "She's predicting everything." They moved in tandem, trying to corner a cadet who was now panicking. Lyra quickly traced their flight paths, calculated the exact timing to intercept, and fired twice. The drones exploded in perfect synchronization, clearing the way. The cadet blinked at her in disbelief, unsure how to respond. The arena was a mix of triumph and failure. Some cadets had overestimated their abilities, while others were beginning to realize that brute force alone was not enough. Lyra's methodical approach contrasted sharply with the chaos around her, drawing reluctant admiration from those who witnessed her skill. A new challenge emerged. The AI sent in drones programmed to adapt mid-flight, changing their patterns randomly. Panic spread among the cadets. Many faltered, unsure how to respond. Lyra, however, remained calm. She quickly recognized the limited options the drones had when reacting to human movement. By anticipating these adjustments, she neutralized the drones with minimal effort, leaving her path open to assist others. One of her teammates, a cadet who had spent the morning boasting about his strength, found himself cornered. Lyra's calculations predicted every move of the drones attacking him. She intercepted with pinpoint accuracy, taking out threats before he even realized they were there. The cadet stumbled back, his pride wounded, but he was alive. He looked at her with a mixture of awe and shame. As the exercise continued, Lyra's quiet efficiency became impossible to ignore. Cadets who had mocked her yesterday now watched with a mix of respect and fear. She was not just surviving the chaos, she was controlling it. Her every movement was intentional, every action calculated, every outcome anticipated. By the end of the simulation, Lyra had neutralized nearly every drone in the arena, often without anyone noticing until the results flashed across the AI's display. Her team had survived intact, while others had suffered injuries or failed to complete objectives. The chamber fell silent, the echoes of chaos replaced by stunned murmurs. The tall, arrogant cadet approached her again, his pride bruised. I don't understand. How did you do all that?" he asked, his voice a mix of confusion and grudging respect. Lyra looked at him calmly. "I paid attention. I calculated the possibilities. You were too busy trying to prove yourself." She smiled faintly, but there was no arrogance in her expression, just quiet confidence. Other cadets began to approach, some hesitantly, others with genuine curiosity. "Teach me how you did that," one said. "I want to understand your method." "If you observe and act carefully, you can achieve more than anyone expects." Her quiet notes were more than diagrams and numbers. They were a record of strategy, a map of patterns, and a preparation for the unknown. Lyra knew that when the real test came, it would not be the loudest, strongest, or most aggressive who survived. It would be those who observed, calculated, and adapted. The murmurs of admiration and shock continued around her, but Lyra paid them little mind. She was already preparing for the next challenge, the next exercise, the next obstacle. She traced lines on the page, calculated angles, and predicted outcomes, her mind working faster than anyone could imagine. In the halls of the Orbital Academy, one truth was becoming clear. Underestimating someone who moved quietly, observed carefully, and calculated precisely was a mistake that no cadet could afford to make. Lyra closed her notebook for the moment and looked toward the massive viewport overlooking the planet. Stars glimmered in the distance, and the planet's oceans shone in the morning light. Somewhere out there, challenges awaited that would require more than strength or speed. They would demand strategy, intelligence, and resolve. And when that time came, Lyra Vance would be ready. She adjusted her satchel, took a deep breath, and stepped forward, ready to face whatever the AI or the universe would throw at her next. And somewhere in the back of the academy, cadets who had laughed at her quiet notes yesterday were beginning to understand something important. They had seen only a glimpse of her abilities, and even that was enough to make them step back, reevaluate, and wonder. Had they been wrong to mock the quiet one all along? Lyra didn't answer that question. She never did. She let her actions speak, and for now, her notebook remained her constant companion, filled with the calculations and strategies that would keep her one step ahead in a world that prized noise over thought. And as the next simulation loomed, the cadets could only watch, uncertain, nervous, and increasingly aware that the quiet girl they had mocked was someone to be reckoned with. The Orbital Academy was quieter that morning, not because the cadets had learned to be disciplined, but because they were cautious. Whispers followed Lyra Vance wherever she went. Her quiet confidence and precise actions in the previous exercises had shifted something in the academy. Cadets who had once laughed at her notes now looked at her with a mixture of respect and unease. Even the instructors noticed the change. Lyra didn't seek attention. She didn't want accolades. She only wanted to prepare, to understand, and to excel. She walked through the main hall toward the simulation chamber, her notebook open, pen moving in small, deliberate strokes. Today's exercise was not just about drones or predictable AI patterns. It was about team coordination, leadership, and strategy under pressure. The AI instructor appeared, hovering in its usual spot. Its metallic voice filled the chamber. Cadets, today's simulation will test team dynamics and adaptive strategy. Each team will face a set of autonomous combat drones, which will now learn from human behavior during the exercise. Teams that fail to anticipate adaptive patterns will be penalized. Efficiency, coordination, and strategic execution are required. Commence preparation. Adaptive drones were the next level of challenge, a test meant to reveal the most capable strategists. Many cadets exchanged nervous glances, realizing that yesterday's techniques might not be enough. Lyra found her usual corner, notebook in hand. She flipped through her previous calculations, noting where her predictions had succeeded and where minor errors had occurred. She drew diagrams of potential drone responses to team behavior, highlighting the points where missteps could occur. To the casual observer, it seemed like obsessive note-taking. To Lyra, it was preparation for near-perfect execution. One of the arrogant cadets approached her, smirking but with a trace of caution in his eyes. "You really think scribbles can help you lead a team? You've done well alone, I'll give you that, but this is different." The adaptive drones adjusted their movements in real time, coordinating with one another in ways the cadets hadn't encountered before. Panic spread quickly among teams that relied on brute force or impulsive maneuvers. Some cadets tried to charge through, only to find themselves outmaneuvered, trapped, or forced to retreat. Lyra entered calmly, scanning the battlefield. Her eyes moved from drone to cadet to obstacle with precision. She observed the drone's adjustments, noting small delays, hesitation points, and predictable reactions to human movement. She plotted her team's route carefully, marking angles of engagement and safe zones in her notebook. One of the drones moved rapidly toward a teammate, a cadet who was clearly struggling to keep pace. Lyra calculated the intercept trajectory in a heartbeat. She fired, disabling the drone with a single, precise shot. Her teammate blinked, unsure whether to be grateful or embarrassed. "How did you?" he started, but Lyra only nodded and moved on. The exercise intensified. Drones began coordinating attacks on multiple cadets, forcing teams to split or risk being overwhelmed. Lyra's strategy emerged clearly. She moved not just to neutralize threats, but to guide her team through the chaos. She directed cadets to cover positions, to flank drones, to create openings. Her instructions were calm and precise, leaving no room for hesitation. At first, her teammates were confused. They were used to shouting, impulsive actions, and last-minute improvisation. But slowly, they began to notice the difference. Lyra's directions worked. When they followed her instructions, obstacles cleared more efficiently. Threats were neutralized with minimal risk. The team began to move like a single organism, each cadet anticipating the next step. The arrogant cadet who had mocked her before tried to interfere, rushing into a cluster of adaptive drones with reckless energy. Predictably, he was almost trapped, drones coordinating to cut off escape routes. Lyra didn't hesitate. She calculated the angle and timing, neutralized the immediate threats, and signaled him to regroup. His face turned red, not from exertion but from recognition. He had underestimated her. By the halfway point of the exercise, it was clear to everyone that Lyra's quiet calculations were controlling the battlefield. She had predicted the drones, adaptive strategies, guided her team with precision, and minimized casualties. Cadets who had been skeptical were now reluctantly impressed. Some whispered, some stared, and some followed her instructions without question. The AI instructor monitored the exercise closely. Its voice broke through the chaos. Observation. Lyra Vance demonstrates exceptional anticipatory strategy, team efficiency increasing under her guidance. Notable adaptation observed among cadets following instructions. She remained focused on the next challenge, a group of drones attempting to isolate the slowest cadet in her team. She had already predicted this move and adjusted positions in advance. When the drones executed the attack, her team was ready. Flanking angles, suppressive fire, and precise maneuvers neutralized the threat almost before it existed. The isolated cadet stared at her in awe. I didn't think we could do that." Lyra's mind raced. She recalculated positions, trajectories, and timings, updating her instructions in real time. Her team responded smoothly, each cadet trusting her guidance. A group of adaptive drones moved toward the cadets' rear, attempting to split their formation. Lyra anticipated this. She directed one cadet to hold position while another moved to intercept, timing every action to perfection. The drones were neutralized before they could exploit any gaps. The team flowed like water, overcoming every obstacle with coordinated precision. By the end of the simulation, Lyra's team had successfully completed the exercise with minimal errors. The chamber, filled with chaos and noise just minutes before, now fell silent. Cadets who had doubted her stared in amazement. The arrogant cadet who had mocked her walked toward her, face set in a mixture of frustration and respect. I didn't realize. You really know what you're doing. Observe, calculate, and act, that's all." Cadets who had once mocked her now sought her guidance. Instructors took note of her methods, remarking on her extraordinary ability to anticipate and adapt. Even those who were initially jealous of her skill could not deny the results. She was quietly becoming a leader, not through words or arrogance, but through intellect, strategy, and precision. Lyra remained unchanged. She didn't demand attention, didn't bask in praise, and didn't boast about her abilities. She continued to study, to calculate, to write in her notebook. Every exercise, every simulation, every small challenge was another opportunity to refine her understanding. She knew that the real test would not be here in the academy, but out in space, against threats that would not follow predictable patterns. Her quiet confidence inspired her team. They began to anticipate her instructions, to trust in her calculations, and to move with purpose. They understood that following her guidance increased their chances of success, and slowly they became more than a team. They became a unit capable of overcoming challenges that no single cadet could face alone. The academy, once a place of loud boasts and reckless actions, was beginning to recognize a new truth. Intelligence, observation, and precise calculation could outperform brute force. Humans had a way of surprising others, especially when underestimated. Lyra Vance was proof of that. As she walked through the halls later that evening, notebook in hand, cadets whispered behind her back. Some expressed admiration, some envy, and some a cautious respect that bordered on fear. Lyra ignored them all. Her focus was elsewhere. There were patterns to study, strategies to refine, and calculations to perfect. She paused at the viewport overlooking the planet, watching the sun set over oceans that gleamed like molten gold. Somewhere out there, challenges awaited that would require more than strength or speed. They would demand intelligence, patience, and the ability to adapt. She was ready. She had always been ready. The academy could try to prepare her all it wanted, but Lyra knew one thing. Humans were capable of far more than most expected. Quiet minds, thoughtful calculations, and precise actions could change outcomes that brute force could not. And when the time came, the cadets who had doubted her would understand that underestimating the quiet ones was a mistake they could never afford to make. Lyra opened her notebook again, pen moving swiftly across the page. She was already calculating for the next exercise, predicting every move, every angle, every possibility. The adaptive drones had tested her today, but tomorrow she would be ready for anything. And somewhere in the whispers of the academy, one truth became clear. The quiet ones, the observers, the thinkers, the calculators, were often the most dangerous. Lyra smiled faintly, closed her notebook, and walked away, already planning, already calculating, already one step ahead of everyone else. The announcement came over the academy's intercom, crisp and commanding. Cadets, the Interorbital Championship will begin in 3 days. Teams will face elite squads from across the academy. Efficiency, strategy, and adaptability will be tested at the highest level. Prepare accordingly. It was the pinnacle of training, where the best cadets competed in challenges designed to push their limits. Many felt excitement, others anxiety, and some sheer intimidation. For Lyra Vance, it was just another problem to solve. She walked through the corridors with her usual calm, notebook in hand. Her team followed silently, sensing that the quiet cadet who had turned the last exercise into a display of brilliance would once again lead the way. Lyra did not speak unless necessary, but when she did, her words were precise and effective. In their preparation room, cadets from other teams were already practicing, showing off advanced maneuvers, flashy weapon displays, and intricate coordination. Lyra observed them carefully, noting patterns, timing, and tendencies. She scribbled in her notebook, mapping each possible move, each likely strategy. She calculated the interactions between teams, the weaknesses in formations, and the angles where mistakes could occur. Her team watched her, some nervous, some eager to follow her guidance. One cadet, a quiet but determined boy named Jaren, asked, "Lyra, do you really think we can beat them? They've been training for years." "We need understanding, coordination, and precision. Follow the plan, and we'll outperform anyone who underestimates us." Elite cadets from all teams took their positions, boasting confidence, many underestimating Lyra's quiet team. The AI instructor addressed all cadets. "Championship rules. All teams face identical challenges. Teams will be evaluated on efficiency, strategy, coordination, and adaptability. Only those who maintain composure and strategic execution will succeed." Commence simulation. Lyra's team remained calm. She observed the movements of drones and other teams, noting predictable and repetitive tendencies. She traced patterns in her notebook and directed her team with quiet authority. "Cover the flank," she said to one cadet. "Anticipate the left side drones, Jaren, timing, not speed." At first, some teammates hesitated, accustomed to making decisions independently. But Lyra's precision and calm confidence inspired trust. Slowly, they began to follow her guidance, moving as a single, coordinated unit. One elite cadet team, known for aggressive maneuvers, charged toward Lyra's team with confidence. They underestimated the quiet strategist. Lyra had predicted their approach and calculated the optimal angles for defense and counterattack. She directed her team to hold positions and create an illusion of vulnerability. When the elite cadets took the bait and overcommitted, Lyra executed a perfect counterstrike, neutralizing multiple drones and forcing the opponents into defensive positions. Across the arena, other teams began to notice. Whispers of disbelief spread. "How is she doing that?" one cadet muttered. "She's controlling everything without shouting." She focused on the next challenge, a swarm of drones moving in complex formations to block their progress. She calculated the timing, the angles, and the minimum effort needed to neutralize the threat without exposing her team. With precise coordination, her team executed her plan flawlessly, clearing the swarm in moments. The simulation increased in intensity. Platforms shifted faster, hazards activated unpredictably, and enemy teams coordinated attacks on multiple fronts. Many cadets panicked, rushing without thought, causing mistakes that Lyra had anticipated. Her team moved deliberately, adapting to every change, neutralizing threats efficiently, and advancing through the arena. At one point, an elite cadet team attempted a flanking maneuver to isolate Jaren, the slower member of Lyra's team. Lyra had already foreseen this move. She directed two cadets to intercept while Jaren repositioned. The plan worked perfectly. The flanking attempt failed, and the elite cadet team was forced to retreat. The crowd of observers, academy instructors, fellow cadets, and spectators watched in awe. The quiet strategist who had once been mocked was now orchestrating an entire battlefield. Her team moved like a single organism, each action precise, efficient, and coordinated. As the championship continued, the challenges became even more demanding. Adaptive drones attempted to anticipate their strategies, moving unpredictably to counter her plans. Lyra recalculated in real time, issuing directions with perfect timing. She minimized mistakes, maximized efficiency, and maintained her team's composure under pressure. Other teams struggled, frustrated by their inability to adapt. Many elite cadets had relied on brute force and speed, not anticipating the subtlety of strategic calculation. Lyra's team, by contrast, demonstrated the power of observation, patience, and precise execution. Near the final stage, a massive coordinated attack was launched by two opposing elite teams, targeting the center of the arena where Lyra's team had positioned themselves. Most cadets would have panicked. Lyra remained calm. She had predicted the approach, calculated the timing, and devised a sequence of maneuvers that would neutralize the threat without unnecessary risk. Her team executed the plan perfectly. Enemy cadets were forced into defensive positions, drones were eliminated efficiently, and the pathway to victory remained clear. The final moments of the simulation tested speed, decision-making, and adaptability. Lyra guided her team through every challenge, her quiet instructions precise, her calculations flawless. When the simulation ended, the results were displayed. Lyra's team had completed the course with the highest efficiency score in the Academy's history. Casualties were minimal, objectives exceeded, and strategic execution unmatched. The chamber erupted in applause, but Lyra did not celebrate. She simply closed her notebook and observed the reactions around her. Cadets who had doubted her approached, some hesitant, others eager to understand. "I don't know how you did that," one admitted. "We've trained for years and couldn't match you." Her methods may redefine how we approach training. The championship was more than a test of skill. It was a confirmation that intelligence, observation, and calculated action could surpass raw power. Humans had a tendency to be underestimated, especially those who moved quietly, observed carefully, and calculated precisely. Lyra was proof of that truth. As she walked through the halls later, notebook in hand, cadets whispered behind her back. Respect, awe, and even a hint of fear followed her steps. She ignored it, as always. There were more calculations to make, more strategies to refine, and more preparation for challenges yet unseen. The Interorbital Championship had tested her, but it had also shown that her methods worked under the highest pressure. Tomorrow, the Academy would return to its normal routines, but Lyra knew the next test, real, unpredictable, and far beyond simulations, was out there, somewhere in the stars. She opened her notebook again, pen moving across the pages. Observations, predictions, calculations, they were ready for the next challenge. And when that challenge came, Lyra Vance would be prepared, quietly leading her team to success without fanfare, relying only on skill, precision, and the power of human ingenuity. Somewhere, the cadets who had once laughed at her quiet notes were learning a valuable lesson. Underestimating a human, especially one who observed, calculated, and adapted, was a mistake they could never afford to repeat. Lyra smiled faintly, closed her notebook, and stepped toward the viewport, gazing at the stars beyond. Her mind was already moving forward, calculating angles, probabilities, and strategies. The championship had ended, but the real journey, the one that required humans to exceed expectations, to survive, and to triumph, was only beginning. And in that quiet confidence, one thing became certain. The quiet ones, the thinkers, the observers, and the calculators were often the most unstoppable force in the universe. The final day of the Interorbital Championship arrived, and the atmosphere in the Academy was electric. Cadets from every class, instructors, and even spectators from other stations had gathered to watch the culmination of months of training. The arena, larger and more complex than ever, extended across multiple levels, with moving platforms, shifting obstacles, and unpredictable hazards integrated with AI and human-controlled opponents. Lyra Vance stood quietly at the edge of her team's staging area, notebook in hand. She had reviewed every detail, calculated every possible scenario, and devised strategies for every challenge the championship could throw at them. Her team looked to her with a mixture of trust and anticipation. They had seen her brilliance before, but nothing compared to what was about to unfold. Across the arena, elite cadet teams from every corner of the Academy positioned themselves. Many had trained for years, confident that their strength, speed, and experience would carry them to victory. Few paid attention to Lyra's quiet team, assuming that the noisy, flashy teams would dominate. That was the mistake Lyra had anticipated. The AI instructor's voice cut through the arena, calm and commanding. Final championship simulation commencing. Teams will face layered challenges, combining adaptive drones, environmental hazards, and human-controlled opposition. Efficiency, coordination, and strategic execution will be evaluated. Begin. Drones swarmed unpredictably, hazard zones activated at random, and enemy teams launched aggressive attacks. Loud commands and impulsive actions dominated the arena at first, as elite cadets tried to assert control through brute force. Many misjudged their timing, collided, or triggered hazards that disrupted their formations. Lyra remained calm. Her eyes moved from drone to cadet to obstacle with deliberate precision. She traced patterns in her notebook, calculated the angles, and gave quiet, concise instructions to her team. Cover the right flank. Jaren, anticipate the approaching swarm. Timing, not speed. Move in sync. Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, they moved as a single coordinated unit. Lyra's calm authority transformed their actions from reactive to proactive. A swarm of adaptive drones approached from above, targeting multiple cadets simultaneously. Other teams panicked, firing wildly and blocking each other's paths. Lyra's team executed her plan flawlessly. Each member moved precisely where she had calculated, neutralizing threats with minimal energy and maximum efficiency. The drones collapsed in a controlled sequence, leaving the pathway open for her team to advance. Meanwhile, an elite cadet team attempted a complex flanking maneuver, aiming to isolate Lyra's slower members. Lyra anticipated the move. She directed 2 cadets to intercept while another covered the vulnerable teammate. The maneuver worked perfectly. The flanking team's plan failed, and they were forced to retreat under precise counterattacks. The arena shifted again. Platforms moved, hazard zones appeared without warning, and adaptive drones modified their patterns in response to human behavior. Many cadets faltered, unsure how to react. Lyra recalculated in real time. Every move, every angle, every reaction was accounted for in her mind and translated into clear instructions for her team. At the midpoint of the championship, Lyra's team faced the toughest challenge yet, a coordinated strike by 3 opposing elite teams, along with drones programmed for maximum adaptability. Most cadets would have panicked, but Lyra remained calm. She divided her team strategically, creating layers of defense while maintaining offensive pressure. Every team member moved as she had predicted, intercepting threats, neutralizing drones, and advancing without exposing weaknesses. The arena became a blur of motion. Drones, cadets, and hazards swirled around, but Lyra's team maintained a controlled, synchronized flow. They moved like water through a chaotic storm, each action deliberate, each step calculated. Cadets from other teams watched in disbelief as the quiet strategist orchestrated an entire battlefield without raising her voice or showing haste. The elite cadets who had once underestimated her now struggled to adapt. Their reliance on brute force and improvisation could not match the precise coordination of Lyra's team. She predicted their moves, calculated optimal counters, and guided her team to exploit weaknesses with surgical precision. Near the final stage, a massive combined attack was launched. Enemy cadets attempted to surround her team while drones dropped from multiple levels, hazard zones activated unpredictably, and environmental obstacles shifted rapidly. Most would have panicked. Lyra's mind raced, calculating probabilities, timing, and angles. She issued instructions with perfect timing, directing her team to split, intercept, and counter with flawless execution. The synchronized precision of Lyra's team neutralized threats almost before they existed. Drones were destroyed efficiently, opposing cadets forced into defensive positions, and hazard zones navigated with exact timing. The chaos of the arena contrasted sharply with the calm, coordinated movement of her team. Cadets who had mocked her, envied her, or ignored her in the past now watched in awe. Her quiet notes, her careful calculations, and her strategic mind had transformed her team into an unstoppable force. The elite cadets realized, too late, that underestimating the quiet strategist had been a fatal mistake. The final moments approached. Only the last set of drones and the remaining opposing cadets stood between Lyra's team and victory. She calculated the minimum effort required for maximum impact. She positioned her team strategically, anticipating enemy responses down to the last second. When the drones swooped in and the cadets advanced, her team struck in perfect harmony, neutralizing every threat and maintaining formation integrity. The AI instructor announced the results. Lyra Vance's team, maximum efficiency, 0 casualties, superior strategic execution. Victory achieved, record-breaking performance confirmed. The elite cadets who had underestimated her nodded, some with respect, some with grudging acknowledgement of defeat. Lyra didn't celebrate loudly. She closed her notebook, her expression calm. Her team had executed perfectly, their trust in her guidance confirmed. They had demonstrated that intelligence, strategy, and precision could surpass raw strength and reckless confidence. Her team gathered around her, exhausted but triumphant. I didn't think we could do that," Jaren admitted. "But you planned everything, we just followed." "That's why we succeeded." Lyra Vance exemplifies the pinnacle of strategic human potential. She gazed at the stars beyond, thinking about the challenges that awaited beyond simulations and training. Drones, hazard zones, and rival cadets were only practice. Real challenges were out there in space, unpredictable and dangerous. But she was ready. She had trained, calculated, and led with precision. She knew that humans, when underestimated, could accomplish the extraordinary. Her team gathered quietly beside her. They didn't need words to celebrate. Their performance, guided by her mind, had proven the value of intelligence, observation, and strategy. Humans had always been underestimated by others, by circumstances, and by themselves. But in that moment, Lyra and her team had demonstrated what humanity was capable of when careful thought and courage combined. In the days that followed, the championship results became a point of discussion throughout the academy. Cadets studied her methods, instructors implemented new strategies based on her approach, and even rival teams admitted that the quiet strategist had changed the rules of engagement. Lyra, however, remained unchanged. She continued her calculations, her observations, and her preparation. There were more challenges ahead, and she would meet them as she always had, with calm determination and precise strategy. Her notebook, once the object of ridicule, had become a symbol of intelligence, preparation, and human ingenuity. Cadets who had mocked her now understood that quiet minds often carried the greatest power. Lyra Vance had proven that underestimating a human, especially one who thought, calculated, and adapted in silence, was a mistake no one could afford to make. The Orbital Academy returned to its routines, but the lessons of the championship lingered. Cadets who had relied solely on strength or speed began to pay attention, to observe, to plan. The culture of the academy shifted subtly, respect for intelligence and strategic thinking rising alongside the traditional emphasis on skill and strength. Lyra continued to walk quietly through the halls, her notebook in hand. She observed, calculated, and prepared, always a step ahead. The championship was over, but the future awaited. New challenges, unknown dangers, and opportunities for ingenuity lay beyond the safety of the academy, and she was ready for them. In that quiet determination, one thing was certain. Humans, underestimated by others and often overlooked, had a power all their own. Observation, calculation, and precise action could overcome even the greatest challenges. Lyra Vance had demonstrated this truth, not with noise or arrogance, but with calm, unyielding intelligence. As the stars glittered beyond the viewport, Lyra closed her notebook one final time that day. She looked to the horizon of space, her mind already calculating, predicting, and planning. The championship had proven one thing beyond doubt. The quiet ones, the observers, the thinkers, the strategists, were unstoppable when underestimated. And somewhere in the academy, cadets who had once mocked, ignored, or doubted her nodded silently to themselves, finally understanding the truth. Lyra Vance had not only won a championship, she had shown the universe what humanity could do when it trusted its intelligence, its preparation, and its courage.